discuss how we'll proceed in the hearing. The appellant has submitted, and I think I agree that there is rather too much for one day. That's why I asked if the council was available for the next day. The council is not available for the following day. So first, I guess, does the council agree that we're not going to get through it in a day? I think it looks like that.
I think it looks like that too. I'll come on to what we will propose in a second, but in principle, I think we're not going to be able to do it in a day.
Yeah. Okay. And the appellant's proposed taking out the education section. Does the council agree with that?
We disagree with that.
Okay.
We think that housing, land supply and education can be heard on the same day. We don't see a need to change the running order that's in the agenda. I mean, the main reason for that is we've already stated with our hearing statement submission that we reserve the right for further comment. The council's not formed a settled view on MPF4 and would need to go through elected members to reach that settled view on the document. And that would avoid, in my opinion, moving it that further down the line would avoid further submissions on MPF4 later down the line, saving a bit of time.
I'm not sure. Are you saying the interpretation document or the council's view on the application might change if you with MPF4?
Well, we've submitted what we've submitted in the time frame, and I think we've made that clear that we've had to form a view and we've had to get the hearing statement in, but it's not the settled view of the council, and this is just what we have put as our assessment at the time. If our view on anything changes when the report, which will go to full council, as I understand, on the 20th of December, that's when the council will reach a settled view on the draft revised MPF4.
Sorry, our report on MPF4 will go to the council. Just advising the council on what exactly?
On its contents, and we will be giving that what our view as officers is on that document, and then it will be for members to put forward what their views are and whether they amend the position that's put forward by officers.
Right, but there's nothing that would affect the council's stance on this particular application or appeal.
Well, I can't really say that. I mean, we've put in what we've put in as our interpretation, but the council's view could theoretically change as a result of what the inputs from elected members in the future could be.
Right. Okay. So the council proposal is essentially here housing land supply questions under the present plan and education on Monday, and leave NPF4 issues for another day to be arranged.
I think that date we would propose would be early January as a result of when that report would go to full council.
Yeah, I must say, I think the education issues, and even just the education issues and the housing land issues together, might be a bit of a squash. But perhaps the appellant should come in at this point.
Thank you, sir. So in terms of the council's position on MPF4, I think I've probably got a similar view to you, which is it's a bit surprising that a general position on the interpretation of MPF4 as a document would have a bearing on the way that the council's officers assess this proposal against MPF4 themselves. The officers presumably have delegated authority to run this appeal and to present evidence based on whatever changing circumstances there may be. And I will come on to that in the context of education in a moment. If the council doesn't have delegated authority to make submissions in the light of changing circumstances, that does suggest that the education session should be put off, because there's a clear material change in circumstances coming next Wednesday when the council takes a view on whether to promote changes to the catchment area for the Gavyside development. So my preference, is it worth me saying more about the Gavyside issue at the moment and just our position more fully?
Yes, that's probably a good idea. Just obviously, the station position, not your substantive position.
Yeah, indeed, sir. So hopefully everybody's seen the email that I sent this morning, which attaches the two reports that are due to go to.
I haven't actually seen it yet, but
you haven't. Okay. I'll summarise very briefly what's proposed in that case. And in fact, I see Mr. Cotton's coming. I think Mr. Cotton's either the author or certainly heavily involved in that report, so I'm happy for him to see what he would like to at this stage, if that's helpful.
Mr. Cotton.
I was just going to correct something Mr. MacLeod had said there. He'd suggested that next week there would be a vote that would change the council's position on the Gavyside statutory consultation. So the vote at PDSP is purely to commence consultation. It won't change the catchment next week. It is just a vote saying that it's a possibility to look at changing it. So as Mr. MacLeod had implied, that the vote would change the position at Gavyside in terms of its catchment, whereas actually the vote is purely to commence a statutory process. And in fact, at PDSP, it's just to agree to that being passed on to Education Executive, who will agree to the commencement of that statutory process in January. And then there wouldn't actually be any decision on changing the catchment until June 2023 at the earliest. So just to be clear, that there's no change next week of the Gavyside catchment position. The earliest it could change would be June. So I just want to make that clear.
I think we understand that, but the change I think Mr. MacLeod is referring to is that the council will formally adopt the position of putting that to consultation. Is that right? I mean, the council could theoretically reject putting that to consultation at all, couldn't it?
Yes, but it's more that whether or not the council's putting it to consultation, it won't be the position of the council. So it's not proposing that the council supports the change, it's just proposing that the council should consult. And until we've carried out the consultation, we don't know whether Education Scotland will find that the proposal has educational benefits, and there's no position that the council supports a consultation. So a vote on commencing consultation is not an implication that the council supports the change. It's just a vote that the council supports investigating the possibility of the change. I know it's slightly semantic, but it's an important semantic. But until June, the council will not have a position on whether or not it supports the change in any way. It's just something
but surely the point is that the council takes a position that this is something to put to consultation. This is a proposal that they're putting out there that will be consulted on. Whether the council agrees to that, whether the council ultimately adopts that or not, is a matter for decision after the consultation. But it is a step forward in the sense that the council has taken a position which has made a proposal which is putting to consultation. Is that not the case?
Yes, yeah, I'm happy for that. I just want to make it clear that the limitation on that, which is that it's not necessarily that it's not prejudging that it will be supported, and it's not even prejudging that it will go forward. But I agree with Mr. MacLeod that it is a change. What I wouldn't agree was just stating that it's the council supporting that change yet. But we'll have to wait until June to find that out. So I just want to be clear on that. Slightly semantic position.
It did come as a slight. I mean, I hadn't had wind of the idea of a catchment change before, so it might be good if we have time to get to that. I'm sorry, maybe I should bring Mr. MacLeod in here. Do you want to respond to what Mr. Cotton said?
Thank you, sir. Well, I mean, what Mr. Cotton has said is in some ways highlighted the difficulty of the situation we find ourselves in here. The council's position, I had thought, was relatively clear. It was proposing a consultation, setting out what it says is its preferred option, and you'll receive the emails in due course. But the conclusion of the report I can read to you now, which is changes to catchment areas are required in Gavyside to enable further housing development and to meet the council's statutory education responsibilities. Changes outlined in the draft consultation paper would make the best use of existing and future school capacities. Now, we'll hear evidence on all of this in due course, but my primary take on that is it sets out what the Council's preferred position is. It strongly suggests that development at Gavyside cannot and will not happen until such time as the catchment area goes ahead. Now, that whether that's correct or not, the Council can tell us in due course in further submissions. But on the face of it, it does change the Council's position, which until now has been that this is 3.19 of the Council's hearing statement. Until Gavyside Primary School is delivered, the initial phase of houses built at Gavyside will contribute children to their existing catchment primary school, which at present is Parkhead Primary School. Now, there are other parts of the report that's going to panel next week that suggest that is no longer the case. The Gavyside development will not proceed unless this catchment area change is agreed. As I say, it may be that that's completely wrong, but this report has come out the blue for us as well as for you. I think that to make the most efficient use of hearing time, we really need an updated position statement from the Council, which explains exactly what the implications of this would be and whether Gavyside is likely to be developed in advance of a catchment change being agreed or not. Because that does have significant implications for the capacity of Parkhead Primary and the infrastructure implications for this appeal.
If you'd like me to respond to that.
Yes, please.
Sorry,
I was pointing at you. I realised I couldn't,
yeah.
I couldn't point at you.
I'd entirely agree that the conclusions that Mr. McLeod has drawn from that report reflect my view as an officer in terms of what I've written in the report. He's correct, I am the author of the report and I've written that. I think it's just being clear that at present that report only has status as my view as an officer, that I've written that report. So it is not the Council's view at this point because it's what I've written. As of next week, the Council Education PDSP does not vote on a report in terms of having a substantive vote in terms of adopting it as a position. So it doesn't become the Council's view at that point. It just goes forward to Education Executive. And what we're asking Education Executive to do in January is to open the consultation. It's not to give a view on whether or not they agree with my thoughts in that conclusion. So the point is that the Council, as the Council, in terms of a statutory education authority, will not adopt that view of me as an officer. So what Mr. McLeod set out is my view as an officer, that Gavyside requires this catchment view to go ahead. It does not become the Council's view as the statutory education authority until Education Executive adopt the report at the conclusion of the consultation in June. So that's the thing I'd just be clear on, is that it's my view as an officer.
Until June, the planning decisions are premature based on any decision that it would preempt the consultation. Is your position? Yeah.
Yes, but effectively, if we could theoretically come to an agreement between. I think what Mr. McLeod's asking me to do is to set out, if this catchment review were adopted, would it resolve some of the issues? We could potentially have some of that discussion, but whether or not we feel it resolves the issues, at the moment, it wouldn't be the Council's view that this resolves the issues because it hasn't happened yet. I
think with the discussion, I'm becoming more convinced that perhaps we ought to put education off until we've heard what the decision of the Council on the catchment review is, so that we can take that evidence more fully.
The problem would be that wouldn't be until June 2023, so we'd have to postpone the hearing until after June in order to.
I think, but perhaps Mr. McLeod can come back on that.
There may be a way to cut through it, and there is another line in the report, and it's in paragraph D.2 when it reaches you, sir. I'm sorry, I would share it on screen, but I don't seem to be able to do that at the moment. Having various difficulties today. So D.2 says, discussions with the developer, so that's the developer at Gavyside, discussions with the developer have identified that the first phase of development will will not generate a sufficient number of primary school to make delivery of the new primary school viable. However, the existing catchment primary at Parkhead in West Calder is also under capacity pressure. And it goes on to say that the proposal is therefore to amend the catchment boundaries effectively to allow Gavyside to proceed, as I understand it. Now, implicit in all of that is Gavyside will not proceed unless the catchment area happens. So it seems either way, children from Gavyside are unlikely to be going to Parkhead Primary. And it would be useful if Mr. Cotton could confirm his view as an officer, appreciating it's not the council's position, as an officer.
I think the problem with this is that we're getting into the substance of the matter.
I agree,
and the status of that of Mr. Cotton's report. So I think for that reason, I think it really would make sense to postpone the hearing on education at least until after any decision has been taken in respect of that report, whether or not the council thinks it has significance, whether or not it's the council's case that it has significance, simply because it's the appellant's case that it does have significance, and we'll need to examine that issue in the light of any decision that's been taken.
I was just going to say I don't think there's any substantive difference in the council's position between today, when that report has been published, and June. So to me, it doesn't make any difference if we're holding the hearing session on education. Either any time between now and June or after June would be different, but I don't think it would make any difference postponing the education report until January, because any votes now and in January, it would just be to commence the consultation. So the council isn't at that point taking a position on the substantive nature of the paper. And in terms of Mr. McLeod's other point, I can see the argument he's making about Gavyside potentially not going forward either way. It's that primarily this has been the Gavyside developer who has led evidence to us that they don't believe that the viability would necessarily work without doing some of these things. But it would be difficult for me to take a view on. Fundamentally, the council didn't have any objection to the Gavyside development coming forward with it in the Parkhead catchment. It was more to do with developer viability. So if you were wanting evidence on that, it would really need to come from the Gavyside developer, who obviously aren't a party to this case. Although, of course, obviously, Geddes are consultants representing them as well, which complicates matters slightly. But I think it would be difficult for me to comment on whether Gavyside could come forward without the change, because it's fundamentally a matter of the viability of Gavyside's business case, which I haven't seen, so I can't potentially comment on.
All of this again are matters, and the appellant has a particular position on this. The council has a particular position. If we're discussing, if we're getting into issues of what might be sequenced and how following the council's decision, I think that's a matter of substantive evidence. And I think consequently we need to find out what the council's decision is, because that will fundamentally change the approach that's taken. So I think we need to wait, at least from the appellant's point of view. And I think, to be fair to the appellant, I think it's appropriate that we should be able to hear that. Find out what that decision on whether or not to start the consultation and what exactly the position is that the council's taken. So I think it would make sense to have the education hearing after that decision has been taken.
So after the 20th of January.
After the decision has been taken on the consultation, is that on the 20th of January?
Yes. So the commencement of the consultation is on the 20th of January. Education Executive.
No, the decision to commence the consultation. I think we're talking about. So after the decision a decision whether or not to commence the consultation.
Yes, that's the 6th of January Education Executive.
6th of January.
No, the 20th of January Education Executive. Sorry, but the 6th of December report. So the report on the 6th of December decides if councillors want to make any proposed changes to the report before the decision is made. So the 6th of December meeting looks at the wording of the report, and the 20th of January meeting makes the decision. So there's no decisions made at its policy development and scrutiny panel of the council. It's not a decision-making body. It has no decision-making weight.
Right.
It purely gives a view on the wording of papers that go forward to Education Executive or Council Executive.
So it's a kind of consultative body on the wording of papers, right? So
So that's one of the papers
does
first become open to the public. But it doesn't have any decision-making weight. It's purely on the wording of the paper. If any changes are needed to the wording, and then the decision to commence consultation would be taken by Education Executive on the 20th of January, 2023.
That does rather extend things. Mr. MacLeod.
I'm wondering, sir, whether there are a couple of questions. I mean, the email that I sent through this morning to Mr. Bell had invited the council to update its programming for Parkhead Primary School and West Calder High School on the assumption that Gaveside would not be contributing children to those schools. Now, that may be a useful exercise for the council to do anyway. It's up to you to decide how useful that would be. We thought that might be a useful exercise, and I come back to the point Mr. Cotton made. I fully appreciate it's not. Well, from what he was describing, it's the Gaveside developers' decision that they don't want to proceed at the moment. I don't want to get into evidence, but it may be possible to get confirmation from the council, for example, that the Gaveside developer is not willing to sign a Section 75 agreement in terms acceptable to the council until such time as the catchment area review process is complete. If that is the factual position, then that would seem to support our view that children from Gaveside are unlikely to ever attend Parkhead Primary School or West Calder High. Therefore, that would change the nature of the pupil projections for both schools, and that does have implications for the education infrastructure necessary from this development. Now, all of that's a rather long-winded way of saying it may be that there's some discussion that we can have with the council, whether it's formal or informal, that allows us to get to a closer agreed position that may either reduce or get rid of the need for a hearing altogether. Obviously a matter for you, depending on where we get to with that evidence. I just wonder whether the sensible thing to do at this stage would be discharge the hearing as far as education is concerned, invite the parties to try and cooperate over the next couple of weeks to see where they can get to on these issues. We can then come back to you before the end of the year, certainly, let you know where we've got to collectively and see whether there's any common ground that we can set out that then helps you to reach a view on whether you need a hearing or the extent of that hearing.
But wouldn't the council's position simply be that they won't know until June? Perhaps I should ask them.
I think that would be exactly our position, is that you can reach we can have a theoretical discussion with Alan about what the situation might be in June, but our position would be until June it would be premature for that to be decided by the reporter. And this exact issue came up in an appeal 6 years ago at Bangor Hospital, where there was a position of the appellant was saying that there would be space after a catchment review had been undertaken, and the council's position was that the catchment review hadn't occurred at that point, and so it would be premature for the reporter to prejudge the outcome of that decision of the council's education authority and to prejudge Education Scotland's view on the educational benefits. Unfortunately, we don't know what the decision on that case was by the reporter because it's not yet been issued, although the hearing was held in October 2016. So
it has been resolved by the council issuing a new permission, though, there hasn't it?
It has, yeah. So, which is to say that we will go ahead and undertake statutory reviews, and then things get resolved eventually. But in terms of the reporter trying to make a decision, we couldn't come up with a way where it could be resolved at the appeal because there isn't really any kind of minded to grant type process available to a reporter in the same way as for the DM committee in terms of waiting for circumstances to change. But as far as I'm aware, there isn't a process by which you can things apart from just putting an appeal on hold for a period. So our position would just be there is the current position, which is that the children go to Parkhead, and there's a post-June position, which is that the situation may or may not be resolved.
The current position, as I understand it, this is looking at a slightly different aspect, but actually probably the most important one. The current position, as I understand it, is that the Gaviside developer is not willing to sign a Section 75 agreement in terms acceptable to the council, therefore will not get a planning permission, therefore will not ever produce houses and children from those houses, which will go to Parkhead Primary School. That will all be dependent on the catchment review or something else happening in the future. That's what the report appears to disclose, to me at least.
I think I certainly need a bit of time to take in the report, since I don't actually have it yet.
I think that's possibly a reasonable inference, but it's not something that has been explicitly stated by the Gaviside developer. The Gaviside developer has not refused to sign a Section 75, and the consent is still live, and it could be issued tomorrow, and the developer could sign it tomorrow. So I find it difficult when we're not a party to this appeal for us to explicitly state what their view is on this.
No. Nonetheless, I think I probably need a bit of time, and it is Thursday today to review the report at least, and for all of us to understand what the evidential position is and whether any further evidence is needed, and if the appellant and the council can have any discussion further on anything that arises from the report. Well, that would be very helpful. I wonder if we can set a date, at least a preliminary date for a hearing, or does that not make sense on for education if we discharge the hearing on education today?
I think our only issue with agreeing that date now, if that's what you're proposing, sir, is
I'm sorry, that was a bit confusing. Yes. No.
Our education witness is not on this call, so I don't know exactly what his availability would be. We can have that information for you by Monday. If you take the view, which it seems you're leaning towards at the moment, but if you take the view that the education part of the hearing should be discharged, we could all, I'm sure, confirm by Monday when we would be available for a rescheduled hearing. That's post 20th January or pre. It may be that you can reflect on that as to whether you think you need to wait until the 20th of January to have a revised education here.
I think it makes sense in the circumstances to discharge the hearing. It would be helpful to have, if the council and the appellant can agree between them, at least a preliminary date for a hearing. Does it make sense to have it in the new year?
We had previously set out 2 dates. I think the week after next probably feels a bit soon now, given what we've been discussing in the last half hour or so. We are available the 19th and 20th of December. It's a question for the council, and probably in particular Mr. Cotton.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not available that week. It's school holidays have commenced by that point, unfortunately. So I'm on school holiday duty. Apologies.
It's a good excuse to get out of that.
I am working between Christmas and New Year, but I'm not sure that anyone else is going to want a hearing then.
I'm not working between Christmas and New Year, I'm afraid. I am available 13th, 19th, and 20th. So I think if we don't have a date, then it does begin to look like the new year. I'm afraid that our hearing timetable is quite tight in the new year, simply because we have a lot of hearings coming back on NPF4, particularly on wind farms that require comments on NPF4. So I don't think more than a day would be needed for education. So and hopefully, if the appellant and the council can minimise issues between them, then maybe less than a day. but it would be useful if the council and the appellant could agree that as soon as possible. Mrs. Dalter.
Sir, yeah, so Mr. Fulton, can I just confirm, are you okay with us working with you in a theoretical situation to get some evidence put together?
Yeah,
yes. Right. Oh, sorry, to Mr. Cotton, yeah.
Yes, I'm quite happy to discuss narrowing the areas of disagreement. So I think my fundamental concern will always be the council's prejudging issue. So I don't think we can come to an agreement on that. But in terms of the factual position, once the decision is made in June, I'm sure we could come to a position which would agree what the theoretical position in June might be. But I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on the sort of disagreement on that fundamental element of it, if that makes sense.
Okay. The other thing that Mr. Watson brought up was the council. So we've decided to discharge the education hearing, and the council and the appellant will work together to minimise issues, and we'll come up with a date which we'll need to check our IT team is available for too in the new year. The other thing was the issue Mr. Watson brought up about NPF4. The extension, the submissions on NPF4 go quite wide, and the council is reserving, well, is saying that it's reserving the right to make further comment on NPF4. Is there a case for either? I don't know. I was going to ask you for comments on the agenda. I've tried to sort of sort the housing land issues in NPF4 from the remaining issues in NPF4. Is there a case for just having the hearing on the housing land supply issues, perhaps including those from NPF4, and then holding over the NPF4 issues, the hearing on NPF4 or other issues on NPF4 until a later date when the council had an opportunity to take a position on it? What do you think, Mr. MacLeod? Or Mr. Watson?
I'll let Mr. Watson answer
okay. First. Thank you, sir. I think that would be an acceptable position to us to just keep to what's in the agenda for the housing land supply and related policy. With I think that's 7. It's item 7 under heading 2 for that. So I think we could keep that in, and then we would reserve all others for a future date. That would be an acceptable position to us.
Right.
It sounds acceptable to me. Can I just check? Here we go. I've got it. Yeah. And again, I mean, I suppose I don't know how much of a difference of opinion there is between the appellant and the council when it comes to NPF4, because some of the, so for example, the brownfield land presumption against greenfield development, if you like, the council's position is it's not support. This site's not supported. There's no policy that supports it in the LDP. The appellant's position is there is, because the policy how to does that, and you know there's probably not much either party can say about that. It's really just going to come down to a question of whether you find that policy how to does support the development or not.
I must say I have a concern that I may have made a mistake procedurally in not consulting the other parties on NPF4. I think it actually might make sense if we're putting off the hearing on NPF4 to if we're putting off part of the hearing to have an opportunity for other parties other interested parties to make representations on NPF4. If that makes sense, we can maybe give them an opportunity to either make written submissions or to appear at a hearing.
I don't have a strong view on that matter, sir. I mean, quite happy. I think if you feel that that's something that you need to do, then it's clearly a matter for you.
I think simply because it goes quite wide.
Yeah.
It would probably make sense if we're putting off the part of the hearing anyway. Okay. So on Monday then, what I propose is that we deal with agenda item. Well, obviously agenda item 1. We've introduced ourselves now anyway, but we can deal with agenda item 2, and I propose that we do cover the points on the emerging policy and revised draft NPF4, partly because there was a question in the original note that went out to all interested parties in respect of NPF4, in respect of housing policy in particular. But that once we know further about the education hearing, we can perhaps make a broader invitation to all interested parties to either to make a further written submission in respect to NPF4 or to join a hearing on NPF4. Is everyone content with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's fine.
Good. All right. Well, that's decided then. Good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Monday, and we'll have a very interesting time, no doubt. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks so much.